If you've got big dreams and bad jeans, you're in the right place. These shirts are available at barbellapparel.com, link in the description. Mukbang is yet another form of entertainment that only exists thanks to the internet. The genre originated in Korea around 2008 and roughly translates to eatcast. And to the surprise of everyone, including the first mukbangers, it is an absolute goldmine for clicks. In this genre, food is the star, but we're not talking about the same way as Top Chef or diners, drive-ins, and dives. This isn't about culture, it's not about culinary arts, it is not about the experience of dining. It is entirely about the most feral, instinctive, smutty aspects of eating. Mukbang is a sensory orgy where grotesque quantities are consumed on camera to the glee, curiosity, disgust, and arousal of the viewer. And wouldn't you know it, some of the people most eager to capitalize on such content exist in, wait for it, the fitness space. I know, color me shocked. Who would have thought that the fitness industry could feature content that reaches so far down the bottom of the trash bin, past the soggy curly fries that is reality TV, all the way past the dirty diapers of mainstream news media, all the way to the bottom of the can to the syrupy trash juice that we know as mukbang. Some of the more well-known names that have tried their hand at it include the Hodge twins, Callie Muscle, Will Tennyson, and Matt Does Fitness. And I was especially shooketh when I noticed that this was a new trend that seemed to be becoming a new cultural norm for strongman. Now, I don't really have a dog in the fight with general fitness influencers. I'm not losing sleep when these empty husks with six packs put fitness in their name and then dedicate their entire channel to bad vlogging. But I've been a strongman competitor for almost 20 years. I owned a strongman gym for a while. I've ran contests that sent people to the Arnold circuit. This isn't some passing hobby for me. I've cut my teeth, paid my dues, given my pound of flesh, and my bicep tendons. And all in all, I've probably spent six figures over 2 decades to compete in the sport. So I have some things to say when I see the biggest names in my field, which is already associated with obesity, reaching the mainstream by eating 19 pounds of KFC. So yeah, I do have more of a serious reaction to this genre than most people might. Like if my son at 18 years old brings home a mukbang girl, I'm gonna ask why he couldn't have found a cam girl instead. My reaction goes beyond just the bizarre factor. We know through things like over-the-top horror, weird stoner humor, and far out there sexual kinks that human beings have a capacity to find comfort and excitement in really strange shit. The weirdness of mukbang doesn't even faze me. It's the why of it that kind of makes my skin crawl. There's a whole host of psychological underpinnings that lead people to watch large amounts of mukbang content that has roots in addiction and compulsive behavior. And this theme is in lockstep with social media at large, which is changing humanity in ways that we're not going to know for decades. This isn't your great grandma thinking that the radio is going to corrupt the nation's youth. All of the engineers who specifically created this technology to reach to your brainstem and figure out through advanced mathematical models what you are inclined to stay connected to for a few seconds longer are all having sincere ethical concerns for what they wrought upon the world. So mukbang took off because it hits the brainstem in this same way. It appeals to something instinctive that we weren't really aware of until it became a thing through social media. And like so many other addictive things that keep you scrolling, it's very stimulating because it hits a lot of different triggers. For instance, the best snacks are addicting because they're a varied sensory experience. They're crunchy, they're textured, they're colored, they're salty, they're sweet. That's the reason that once you pop, you can't stop. And you get all of that when watching this, along with the ASMR experiences some people get, the tingles, when they see brightly colored foods that are textured and wet and greasy, making slapping noises as the creator polishes off his 7th plate of pad thai. Then there's the indulgent experience of imagining yourself eating the most decadent foods in absurd quantities. And that gets further fueled by the taboo that's felt by those who have to exercise consistent restraint in their day-to-day lives in order to stay at a reasonable weight. Now, it's obvious that all of that is the driving force that pushes views more so than the curiosity factor, because in the strongman community, at least, this is some of the most boring, nothing fucking content you have ever seen in your life.
Nice purple straw.
I know, I thought you would love it.
These videos are basically just casual eating with some small talk, and the small talk is about as interesting as listening to Morgan Freeman read an IKEA manual. I can only imagine how high the click-through rate has to be on these thumbnails to get millions of views, where people must be skipping through the whole thing just to get to the point so they don't fall asleep. If there was but an ounce of care given to audience retention and watch time, you would probably see Mr. Beast levels of engagement. And then strongman as a sport would be done. Nobody would be showing up to contests because they would all be rushing to start their foodie NPC OnlyFans account.
Hee-haw, yes!
Now, watching somebody else engage in vulgar and grotesque displays of binging is a way to derive some type of voyeuristic gratification. it's been compared to watching webcam porn. That sexual component is heightened to the point of an outright fetish, as there is a feeder fetish where men enjoy the idea of fattening women up. And with that, you get an element of the sexual component, but there's a weird juxtaposition of big and small. And we also see that in strongman, where there's a special emphasis on diet swaps, where you have very large humans swapping their diets with small females or even children. Now, the type of content that gets selected for in normal mukbang channels gives a hint as to what the viewer is actually there for. The food typically gets eaten in over-the-top ways with excessive noises, mannerisms, exaggerated expressions, and of course, there's the display of severe emotional dysregulation. So on the surface, at least, it feels like this isn't a great recipe for the population having a healthy connection with food, and it seems to skip past the normal reaction videos, pranks, and other hey, look at me type of shenanigans that typical gymfluencers get into. It makes one wonder where the line of exploitation is between content creators and their audience, and how hard someone has to go in that direction before it becomes a little clownish. So about the strongman, the sport is part of the fitness community at large in some weird, like second cousin, 3 times removed kind of way. Yes, health and fitness isn't their number one priority, and actually it really isn't a priority for any competitor in the gym culture space. But these are people that promote strength training, that do work with other general fitness creators. And given the discussions around self-esteem, compulsive behavior, and disordered eating that seems to permeate gains culture at large, they do get a special spotlight when it comes to analyzing their role in this topic. And while strongman have always been kind of a circus sideshow by themselves, just by virtue of being the biggest, most exaggerated human beings on the planet, strongman as a sport has also specifically been a discipline. Now, many of you might not think that this is a thing that merits anyone's attention, but general fans of sport know that the culture of the athletes has huge implications, both for the viability of the sport as a business and the way that the fans experience. Bodybuilding comes to mind as an example, as it has always been up against the stigma of sexualization. And I don't just mean because of the oil in the trunks, although that doesn't help. There have been ample accusations of scratch my back and I'll scratch yours between competitors and league reps to get ahead.
Well, Jules, the funny thing about my back is that...
And where being the 30th best bodybuilder in the world doesn't pay much, there is a very lucrative side gig in catering to muscle fetishists. Does anyone remember the Facebook guy that used to offer money for people to meet him in Vegas and carry him around? No, just me. Do as thou wilt, I guess. So while no one individual is being harmed when adults consent in such a fashion, the sport as a whole is kept from being as accessible to the general fan base because the gross stuff that goes on behind the scenes isn't so behind the scenes. If you are a fan of sport and you look at this and think, what's the big fucking deal? I would tell you to look back through sport history on how you remember your icons, both their flaws and their victories, and ask if their legacy would be any different if this was how they promoted themselves and their brand to the rest of the world. Would Michael Jordan's legacy be different if he was uploading weekly videos throughout his prime, gorging himself on pasta? What would Schwarzenegger's role be as a cultural icon and motivational figure if his branding was anchored in diet swaps and thumbnails of him sitting on the shitter? This doesn't mean everybody has to take themselves super seriously, and I don't believe any of these people are obligated to stick exclusively to constructive content or be stuck up with their uploads. But the conversation is going to be had when the biggest figure in the sport, Brian Shaw, has uploaded not 2, not 10, but dozens of binge-related videos, not including what he's done as collaborations with other strongmen or with the History Channel. So again, this is about the culture as a whole, not one person uploading something I think is weird. No one creator holds that responsibility on their shoulders, but everyone together, yeah, everyone together has an impact. Because I spent so much time in the sport cutting weight where I would have to regain all those fluids and calories right after in a 24-hour binge fest, I know what it's like to push through vomit-inducing refeeds, and I'm not thrilled that this is becoming the most recognizable feature of the sport. And I get it. People are going to say what they always say when you pee in their Cheerios, something about overreacting or being dramatic or being a prude, or they're going to say that they don't care and they don't have to worry about anybody else's standards. And that's fair play. You don't care. I don't care. Everyone gets to fling poo. Standards are meaningless. Values are relative. You don't need my bad vibes and you're all just squirrels trying to get a nut. But if I can convince one single up-and-comer not to sell out to vulgar displays of gluttony and turn themselves into a food clown to try and make their name in YouTube gym culture, this video will be worth it, and I will have done my part to steer the culture a few degrees back to my special snowflake trajectory. So I'm interested to know what you guys think. Do you think the modern state of internet culture is a benefit or a distraction to sport in general? Does this make you look at any of your favorite lifters differently, or am I completely out of line and nitpicking things to criticize? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.